Hello, and welcome again, this time to video number 5. Today, we're going to be talking about unit combat, which is specifically the main way that players interact in trading card games like the one we're making. This kind of thing is very important to think about well ahead of time, and especially before designing the rules of your game. In today's video, hopefully I can show you the impacts that changing even a small part of these mechanics can have on your game. So, to get right into it, I'm going to start by setting up a small thought experiment. Let's imagine that we have two warring nations who are each trying to defeat one another. We'll call the first nation A and the other one nation B. For whatever reason, we'll imagine that both of these nations have each agreed to take the war in turns, with nation A going first. They've also agreed that they'll only dedicate the same amount of resources to the war effort each turn, and neither is of the cheating time. At the end of each turn, we'll assess the combat strength of each army and determine which one is ahead. So, on the first turn, Nation A goes ahead and decides to do nothing, holding its resources back until Nation B is ready to strike. Currently, neither nation is technically ahead on the battlefield, but Nation A does happen to have a resource advantage at this time. When we move on to the second turn, which is Nation B's first turn, they use all of their resources from this turn to send a singular, regular soldier off to war. At this point, we can see that since Nation B has dedicated a soldier to the battlefield, they would currently hold a tempo advantage and would be technically ahead in that regard, but are at a resource disadvantage to Nation A, who has held on to one turn of resources. So, when we go back to Nation A's turn, they're able to use all of the additional resources they saved from the first turn, plus the ones they got this turn, and send a soldier off to war who possesses twice the strength of a regular soldier. At this point, since both nations have the same amount of resources, but Nation A has a better soldier on the battlefield, you could say that Nation A is very much ahead. Though it's likely because this is their second turn, where Nation B has only had one turn. So finally, we'll loop back around to Nation B's second turn, in which they once again use all of their resources from this turn to send another regular soldier to the battlefield. Now is when you can start to see some differences into how this plays out. Currently, neither nation has a resource advantage anymore, since they both have used everything they have, and both armies have 2 soldiers worth of strength on the battlefield. So, at this point, which player is ahead? I'll give you a few seconds to think on it. If you want to, pause the video here and let me know in the comments which nation you think is ahead before you continue. So, is Nation A ahead, or does Nation B have the advantage? In reality, this is actually a trick question. And the reason for that is because we don't know the win condition for this war. But in a way, this kind of scenario presents us with an opportunity to look into how we could make an argument for either side. You could say Army A is ahead, and since there's no way that a soldier that is twice as strong loses to either of the regular soldiers. Or you could go the opposite way and say that if they were to fight, Army B would be ahead, because eventually they would win with a numbers advantage. 2 soldiers, they're probably better than 1. You could even go on to say that neither side is ahead, because each side balances out, or that the 2 regular soldiers could probably defeat the singular powerful soldier, but that each would perish in the process. If we wanted either side to look like they're winning, however, we could change the parameters of the experiment to determine a winner just a little bit. So, if we wanted Army A to win the war, then we could take a look at the combat rules from the popular trading card game Yu-Gi-Oh! And assume that all soldiers are in attack position. In Yu-Gi-Oh!, players have a set amount of life points or health, and lose when it reaches 0. Each soldier would also have a specified amount of attack points, so I've put both of those up on the screen. Soldiers can attack as soon as they enter the battlefield. When 2 soldiers battle, each of their attack points are compared to one another, with the larger coming out victorious, and the smaller's owner taking the difference as damage before being destroyed. And finally, If a player has even one singular soldier on the battlefield, then their life points can't be attacked directly. Now, if we were to examine the current game state using these rules, then it's pretty clear to see that Nation A is definitely ahead. The larger soldier is essentially an impenetrable wall that Nation B's regular soldiers can never overcome due to the combination of rules 3 and 4. In this scenario, there's no point to Nation B even trying to compete with Nation A's soldiers. If they were to attack, they're just sending their soldiers to die and losing health in the process without damaging the opponent's men at all. While, on the other hand, Nation A has the option of freely attacking one of Nation B's soldiers every turn with zero threat to their own men, and they create an additional super soldier every second turn. If the war were to continue exactly like this, there's no way Nation A could ever come close to losing even a single point of health, let alone losing the war. In that case, how could we change the rules to have Nation B win the war? It's actually really simple. If we take the final rule, which states that soldiers must attack opposing soldiers if they exist, and can otherwise attack the health directly if they don't, and just make it so that the soldiers can only attack the opponent's health and can't attack opposing soldiers, then Nation B will actually have a clear advantage in this war. The reason for that is that Nation B is creating one soldier each turn, whereas Nation A is creating only one soldier every 2 turns, and neither nation has the option of removing the opponent's soldiers. In other words, if we were to look at the maximum damage output after another turn for each of these nations, we would see that Nation B is actually dealing more damage in the long run. On this turn, both nations have the option of dealing 2 damage to each other, but after one more turn for each nation, we can see that Nation A hasn't sent any new soldiers to war, and only has 2 power again, whereas Nation B has a 3rd soldier, and therefore the option of dealing 1 extra damage. After another round of turns, both nations have a total of 4 damage in play once again, but the extra damage that Nation B dealt last turn remains, taken from Nation A's health. This means that if the game played out in this way, Nation B would have a clear advantage and would win the game much sooner than Nation A would even have the option to. Now, obviously, as I usually point out, I do want to say that this example is kind of just for the purpose of this video only, and only works well in a vacuum. Yu-Gi-Oh!, as with most games, most trading card games, is incredibly complex and creates a lot of scenarios that definitely aren't as simple as the ones described here. With one small change in the rules, you can see how it's taken one nation from completely overpowering the other to the exact opposite scenario. It's incredible just how such a small change like this can make such a huge difference, and unit combat really, while being the bread and butter of gameplay for trading card games, needs to be balanced finely so that neither side has such a huge overwhelming advantage. I also want to say that unit combat should probably be more complex than the rules explained in the second example, which are kind of unfun since they don't really allow the players to interact at all. But for the purpose of the game we're making, I have an idea that I think I'll go with when it comes to the unit combat mechanics, and I want to wait till I have a paper prototype made before I even take any chance at explaining it. Anyway, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Next week, I want to talk about gaining resources in-game. You can probably see how it made a big difference in this scenario I put forth earlier, and, well, I probably should have talked about it earlier in this video, but this one was kind of dragging on for now, so I thought I'd leave it here. Have a good day. Bye!